Gospel. It's really lovely. So it's the Sunday after Easter. Christ is risen. And I'm ready to party. But the Gospel of John is not ready to party. It's such a shock. And I wonder how Mary Magdalene felt, not believed. I mean, last Sunday we saw it. She was here at the tomb, uh, saw Jesus. There's a backstory there. She didn't quite recognize him at first. And then she went, Jesus told her, go tell those guys you saw me. And she said, I have seen the Lord. And you think the party would, let's get this party started. But it says that very same day, instead of having a party, the disciples were where and what? What did you observe during Time for Discovery about the disciples? Were they partying? They were afraid. They were afraid. The story says the disciples were in a house, which makes me think, what is this disciple house? That kind of cracks me up, the disciple house. Is it kind of like Animal House? Is there a frat party going on? You're like, what is this house, this disciple house? But there were definitely no togas, no music, no kegs. There was no party going on at this disciple house. They were at this disciple house and they were afraid. They were in the house was locked, signaling usually it wasn't a locked situation. They were locked up because they were afraid of the people who they saw as the ones who harmed Jesus. So complete opposite of a party. They were in lockdown. There. The lights were off. Yeah. Yes. Right. Full bore, frightened mode there. But was Jesus thwarted by a locked room? Was he thwarted by their fear? Was he thwarted by mean people who did harm to him? Did that stop him? It did not. He appeared to them in that locked house, and the first word out of his mouth, did you catch what it was? First word, peace. And this is an extraordinary text today. Jesus says the word peace not once, not twice, but 3 times. 3 times Jesus says peace, peace, peace. And he shows his hands and his side. And then, were the disciples ready to party? They were. It says they rejoiced. And then the next thing, and this is the next time Jesus says peace, he said, you know what? I'm giving you my peace. You're partying. And now I'm going to send you. And he breathed on them, breathed in the Spirit, so that they were sent, like Jesus, in peace to their next step of life. They were sent to take out his peace into the world. Wish the story could end there. But does it end there? Who was out on a grocery run and not there? Thomas. There was one, yes, you did a very exemplary job as Thomas. So Thomas was not there. And part of me feels a little frustrated with Thomas. They're ready to rejoice. And Thomas won't listen to his friends that he's been around for a long time, been in the trenches with. Thomas is like, nope, I'm not going to believe you guys. How stubborn is that? So a week passes, but Jesus was there for Thomas. He comes back into that house. And he singles out Thomas and he says, okay, take a look, Thomas. Here's my hands, my side. And Thomas believes. And then Jesus said, well, that's great. And then he kind of signals to all of us who weren't in the locked room, boy, those ones who didn't see and yet believe, you guys are really blessed. And that's where the story leaves it. So, what's up with the Gospel of John? I would observe again. I'm ready to party. It's Easter. Let's party. Let's get, Lent. Bye bye. Bye bye. Don't let the door hit you, Lent. It's Easter. Wanting to party. Um, but the Gospel of John isn't finished with us. There are still more locks that need to be sprung. So the Gospel of John seems to be signaling us a little patience here. There are some other on-ramps. There's some time. There's some processing that needs to go on for groups and individuals. John seems to create a judgment-free zone where people can understand what's going on at a different pace, not instantaneously, and in different ways. So on the one hand, I feel a little frustrated with Thomas. On the other hand, sometimes I'm Thomas, and I need that extra time. And John is saying, that's okay. Judgment-free zone, many on-ramps for understanding the Lord. Don't, it's okay. It's okay. It's like the early church needed to hear that it takes time, that it's a process, and John even deploys humor in understanding the whole Jesus walking the earth thing. I think, I didn't mention this last week, but last week with Mary Magdalene at the tomb, she was so frightened, running around, and fear just made her crazy. And then she says, she sees a gardener, and then she accuses the gardener of taking Jesus' body. She accuses the gardener of being a thief. And who does the gardener turn out to be? Jesus. I think that's pretty silly. Does it remind us of ourselves when we're all crazy, running around like chickens and over thinking something, catastrophizing? And come to find out, the thief was her teacher. So I think that's pretty funny. I think John is trying to get his first community to calm down, don't overreact. And in the second story, too, the disciples seem to be kind of crazy, so fearful. They are wrapped up, they're locked up. It seems a little excessive. Didn't matter. Jesus stepped in, there he was, peace. And then, like I said, Thomas needed his own private on-ramp, and he got it. That is where the gospel says, if people are overly stubborn, overly alarmed, overly anxious, overly fearful, it's okay. He normalizes it. He says, it's all right. Judgment-free zone. Peace. I'd observe that, this peace, this peacemaking is where John wants to take us. He wants us to think about peacemaking. And as far as peacemaking goes, my goodness, there is a whole array of tools that one could use for peacemaking. And I was thinking about some of you. I won't share your names or whatever, but say over the last 3 weeks or more, some of the creative, compassionate, brave things you have done as peacemakers in your life. One person I'm thinking of had an irritant in their life. And it was a person that they associated this irritant with this person. And the person that told me the story said they learned to think about when this person came up, and it was kind of triggering and unpleasant, and it's just not fun. It's not fun to have ill will towards somebody. But this person thought, I will say, I pray for the best life for this person. I pray for this person's best life. Now, not all of us can go there. There's a whole range of tools that we can use in ordinary peacemaking in our lives. But whoever you are, however God made you, use your creative self, who you are, where you are, and maybe take that little tiny step of peace, compassion. And you may have to be very brave and do things that are a little uncomfortable. You might have to set a boundary, but you are peacemakers. You are peacemakers in the world in your own creative way. I'd also observe in this peacemaking plan that John shows us in the text today that peacemaking didn't happen instantaneously. Jesus showed up to frightened, doubtful, crazy people, and he said peace to them, and he also breathed the Spirit into them. There is a first step in peace, and that is receiving the peace of Christ first. They got that peace, and then they rejoiced, and then they were able to be from that healing, from that altered point of view, from that gift of Christ's peace, they were then able to do this peacemaking work. Peacemaking is not capitulation. I hope we can talk about this topic a lot more, Sunday by Sunday, time by time. I think peacemaking gets a bad rap. And, peace is just pretending like something didn't happen or gaslighting. And then poor Mary Magdalene, she has something to say. She wasn't believed. Notice in the story, part of Jesus' peacemaking was showing the wounds. He didn't pretend like nothing wrong had happened. He showed his wounds and, like this was wrong. This was bad. This was terrible. Yeah. The cross, terrible violence truly happened. And he said, yes, this wrong is absolutely real. But the next thing he said wasn't, the bombing on people who did this to me starts tomorrow. Jesus showed the terrible wrong, but he didn't usher in wrath on the people who harmed him. It may look like capitulation, but the Gospel of John points us, nudges us to another kind of power. That is what peace in the name of Jesus is. We are accessing a next level of power that can easily be poo-pooed, requires discipline, takes time, needs different kinds of on-ramps for different people, but is absolutely real. I think the Gospel of John was in a community that were so afraid. They were persecuted. It's not great. They were probably lower income people. But he wanted them to know Jesus is with you. And there's this other way that you can receive his peace now, and you, with that power of the Spirit within you, practice peace, even among people who cause harm. Oh, so very hard to do. I think this is getting at where John says, you are blessed when you don't see it, but when you believe. And a lot of times we have to believe in peacemaking when we don't see it. I was thinking this week for myself about wrong. What is my theology of wrong in the world? And something that helped me think it through this week was Wrong exists. There's the wounds right before my eyes. Wrong exists. And one step is to say, wrong is provable. Wrong is provable. Because sometimes in our society, we act like, we gaslight. Like something's wrong, and then we're all like, nothing to see here. And we have to tell ourselves, as moral people who follow Jesus Christ, there is wrong, and it's provable. Not to despair. We need to believe that wrong is provable, and there's standards for wrong. And then the second thing, trust that wrong is fixable. Provable and fixable. That's where I need help believing where I do not see or where other people do not see. I believe that wrong is provable. There's standards, there's morals, there's yes and no and good and bad. It's provable. Yes, there's the wounds, there's the terrible thing. Don't capitulate. And it's fixable through such a host of powerful ways that we have yet to unleash in our lives and in our society. And when we tap this power, when we receive Jesus' guidance in our everyday irritants and frustrations, that is where we can say we have seen the Lord. When he shows us this little element of peacemaking, and then we affirm he walks among us. To God be the glory. Amen.